Hello everyone, I'm Michael. Today I'll talk about our work, Selenite, Scaffolding Online Sensemaking with Comprehensive Overviews Elicited from Large Language Models. This was joint work with the amazing Sherry Wu, Tianying Chen, Franklin Lee, and my PhD advisors, Aniket and Brad Myers. Let's start with the word sensemaking. Sensemaking is now deeply embedded in our everyday work and lives. For example, in programming, we often need to figure out what libraries or APIs to use after work, and especially if you're no longer a PhD student, you realize that it is okay to take a vacation from time to time, and you need to figure out what places to visit. And when family happens, you probably need to get a great baby stroller. What's common in these scenarios is that there are almost always an infinite amount of information available. And as someone who's not familiar with these topics, we usually have no idea of where to begin or how to make sense of them. For example, I remember back in 2017 when I needed to pick a JavaScript framework. I searched and browsed the web and found a lot of pages that are relevant, each containing rich information talking about the options that are available, aka the different libraries and frameworks, as well as the criteria that I could use to compare those options, such as the speed, the learning curve, and the size of the developer communities. One thing that became obvious was that if you ever read online reviews or introductory articles, you'd notice many of them tend to be organized primarily by options. For example, by putting options as section headers or at least in bolded fonts, such as this TensorFlow for deep learning framework, this red GE GFW 650 for washing machines, and React Native for frameworks. Meanwhile, criteria are just embedded in paragraphs, sometimes in formal terms, or intertwined with each other, or not even explicitly mentioned, like the language used by this framework, the compatibility, the end user experience, the speed of the development, and so on and so forth. But we have repeatedly observed, both in our prior studies and in our own formative studies, that this is not the best for people's reading and sense making when they're not familiar with the topic for several reasons. In fact, let's walk through a pretty well-written and comprehensive article about baby stroller, which several participants read in the formative study and encountered different issues. First of all, people have limited attention span. They can be easily distracted or just lost after reading the first few paragraphs, and they're overwhelmed by the number of criteria to recognize, capture, digest, and formalize. On the other hand, some people are patient enough to read to the end, but only to find that they shouldn't have. For example, one of our participants noticed a minor note on the usually short 90-day warranty and said, this seems to be my deal breaker, but of course they make the cons hard to find. Indeed, the long-winded paragraphs and descriptions made it very hard for people to read effectively and also selectively on what they actually care about. And finally, when they reach the end of the page, some people can get anxious over the further reading part. As what's highlighted here, there are some criteria that's not even covered in this page. And unfortunately, as first-time learners, they are purely dealing with unknown unknowns here, and there's no intuition or guidance on what they should definitely care about and pay attention to when reading. Essentially, reading and sense-making is not a process that we can take for granted. People do need help on two things: to develop well-rounded knowledge about what might be important for a topic, and to read more targetedly about those items that they care about. Based on these observations, we built a tool called Selenite, which uses AI and LLMs to explore and reimagine what a grounded reading and sense-making process would look like. So at a high level, Selenite provides global overviews that help people build intuitions about a topic. It offers local guidance on digesting text snippets of interest and navigating between them, and it provides suggestions on what people could explore as a next step after, say, making sense of the current article. Now let's walk through Selenite using the baby stroller example. Upon opening a page, Selenite automatically recognizes the topic of the page as Best Stroller of 2023 and scaffolds an overview of the topic in the sidebar. The overview extracts and shows all of the options that the user has encountered in all of the pages that they've been to about baby strollers so far, and also a list of criteria that people commonly consider regarding this topic. The criteria come with intuitive descriptions, which is helpful for people to understand why they're useful and important. Importantly, even though we extract options from web pages that people have personally read, we retrieve common criteria directly from the large language models like GPT-4, independent of web pages. This is because while there could be different options popping up every day, the set of criteria that people commonly care about tend to be much more stable. For one, previous people have experimented with most of the search needs that are out there and summarized them into review articles, which are ideal for LLMs to process and abstract and synthesize. So here is a conceptual demo of generating criteria in real time using ChatGPT. But at a higher level, we prompt LLMs to generate criteria that are most relevant to the topic, frequently considered, and can cover a broad range of perspectives, and then use methods like self-refining to keep iterating on the quality and quantity. Given the global criteria, we relink them with the current web page in focus through what we call in-context criteria annotation. Essentially what happens is at the beginning of each paragraph, we add a list of tags denoting what criteria are mentioned in this specific paragraph. This is done through a zero-shot classification using pre-trained natural language inference models. Basically, given a paragraph and a statement like this paragraph is about this criterion, the model can predict whether this is a true or false statement, and the yes ones are included. So in the overview page, criteria included in the current page will get highlighted, and those are not included will be lowlighted. And later in the case study, we'll see how this could help people read and navigate articles more strategically. And the page augmented with criteria, annotations will be rendered like this. Selenite also offers one more level of zoom in, providing users with sentence level annotations that can help decompose long and convoluted paragraphs. We use GPT-4 to analyze what criteria a sentence is describing and whether it's a positive or negative description. And again, provide inline annotation. Like here, the first green sentence says, expands on an already generous storage basket, and is a positive description on storage space of a baby stroller. Whereas in the middle, it makes a negative comment on the stroller size, saying its footprint is basically too large for navigation. And finally, at the end of the page, we provide a summary of what criteria people have read about and what is not yet being covered for guiding users future searches that would hopefully become more targeted. Right? So that was a quick walkthrough of features. While Selenite can help ground users in what to read, its impact may backfire if the list of options and criteria is not accurate or comprehensive. Therefore, we performed a performance evaluation on whether Selenite can accurately report options that are present on a web page and also comprehensively report critical criteria that people commonly consider. We did this with 10 diverse topics, 5 from the formative study and 5 most popular topics on Wirecutter. We hand annotated ground truth options and criteria from the top 5 Google search result pages. And looking at the results, Selenite achieved 100% accuracy on options, which speaks to the reasoning ability of the language model that we used. And next, I'll dive a little bit more into the results about criteria. To compare the criteria, that Selenite comes up with against a set of ground truth criteria. Here is an example on a topic of best air purifiers. So the yellow ones are hand annotated ground truth criteria, and the blue ones are around 20 criteria generated by Selenite. Here I did a manual pairwise semantic matching or alignment between them. You can see that Selenite was able to cover all of the criteria that we manually and carefully identified, like ease of use or noise levels or price or portability or performance and so on and so forth. And Selenite was also able to get something that are not covered in the ground truth data, but arguably are also real and relevant to the topic, such as child lock and certifications. We measured both the recall and precision of the Selenite criteria, and Selenite achieved very high recall across most of the topics, meaning that the criteria retrieved by Selenite can cover most of the criteria that are talked about in top search result pages. And the precision score is more interesting. We did see some lower precision scores on certain topics, but we found that it's not because Selenite would retrieve unnecessary criteria. It's actually likely because the source web pages don't contain many criteria for comparison. So for example, for topics like birthday gift ideas, popular web pages often present a list of 10 plus diverse options that are hardly comparable, and are all described using generic terms such as fun or sweet. This lack of specificity makes it very challenging to determine a comprehensive set of ground truth criteria. In contrast, Selenite offers comprehensive overviews that are cover factors like practicality, sentimental value, durability, and presentation or wrapping. As for local grounding, we saw near perfect recall and pretty high precision almost everywhere. We did intentionally prioritize recall so people wouldn't miss out information by mistake. Now that the Selenite quality is good, we can ask a follow-up question: how well can Selenite support users reading and sense-making? We did a qualitative case study with 8 participants. Each made sense of 2 assigned unfamiliar topics and a third real-world topic they chose. Our first observation was Selenite prioritizes users' reading needs. Here's an illustration of a common behavior that participants had. They jumped around the page to see descriptions on the same criteria using Selenite's sort of grounding functionality. And in fact, all participants immediately started with browsing through the common criteria in the sidebar, and most of them then frequently jumped between criteria mentions for easy reading and navigation and comparison. For example, one person described this as moving away from hunkering down and read to jumping out of the author's storyline. Selenite also helped save user time and effort. People liked the bird eye overview and all used the paragraph overview for grasping key points that are covered by a particular paragraph. Instead of doing the sort of anxious guesswork, this felt like, back in the day when my classmate would mark all the important stuff in the textbook for me after a class when I couldn't make it. And finally, Selenite helps capture information that would otherwise be missed. For people who use the paragraph zooming feature, they were able to find some subtle logical turns within the paragraph, like how this one first described the stroller to be unsafe, which is negative, but later went on and said good things, like, since we tested these strollers, there were some significant strength improvements. So that was a quick discussion about everything Selenite, and more importantly, a grounded reading and sense-making experience with the help of almost an oracle. It's actually an idea that we've been meaning to try out forever, but the technology wasn't there until recently when LLMs came along, and that is basically the entire internet data encoded in their brains. And that hopefully could make this oracle approach much more scalable to a wide variety of different topics and domains. And since users are still going to read the actual content and verify what they read, to some extent, can address the potential problem of LLM hallucinating irrelevant or incorrect criteria, although we didn't really see that happen in our evaluations. And thank you so much for watching.